I've got internet.
Okay, this is, I'm
No, I got
going to
nothing.
call the FinCom, the Hamilton Financial and Advisory Committee to order. It is 6:32 PM on Wednesday, November 17th. And we have everyone on the FinCom in attendance in person, and we are also broadcasting by Zoom. So the first item on the agenda, as always, is a public comment period. This is a public comment for anything that is not on the agenda today. So if there's anyone from the public attending on Zoom and you'd like to comment on something that is not on our agenda tonight, this is the time to do that. And how should they do that, Alex?
They have their hand raised, and I will allow them to talk.
If you use the little icon to raise your hand, then we will show you on Zoom and allow you to talk.
Peter.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, my name is Peter Gordeau. I live at 416 Bridge Street, and I'm coming as an emissary from the Athletic Facilities Improvement Project Working Group. We just wanted to let the FinCom know that there is a group meeting. It consists of members of the school committee, members of the youth sports organizations, members from both CPCs. So it's about 8 or 10 people. We've now been meeting for the past 3 or 4 months in an effort to further the improvements that we think are important to happen at excuse me, on the high school campus. This started out as a turf field and has grown in scope. So you may recall that we designed and permitted a project a couple of years ago. We are subsequently redesigning the project because there are some new, for a variety of reasons, there are some adds to the project. They'd like to put tennis courts, on the campus. They would like to add a turf softball field in order to comply with Title IX, things like that. So in any event, there is a project that is being conceptually designed at this point. We're trying to put some numbers to it so that we can understand what we can do, what we would like to do, what we should do. And so I don't have anything of great substance to report to you, but I wanted to make you aware that we are meeting and offer myself and as a point of contact, because I've seen too many projects in these communities go sideways when there isn't good communication between the effort, the FinCom, the selectmen, that kind of thing. So this is more just to let you know that we're out there, that we're meeting, and we hope we can keep you informed and work with you.
That's great, thank you. I appreciate it. Nice to meet you, Peter. We can definitely, if at any point you have something of more substance to present to us, we're happy to make an appointment in advance to put you on the agenda and let you know in advance when a meeting is coming up where we could get some information from you. Does anybody else have any?
No, I was
Right now,
going to say the same thing, but I think that's a great idea, Christina, which is at some point in the future putting that on our agenda so we can go and dig into it a little bit.
We'll have a lot more information at the end of the first quarter. So my suggestion is maybe we, March, April, we come to you with, at that point we'll have some idea of both scoping and cost.
Perfect.
Sounds great, thank you.
Have you included the Capcom in this? I didn't hear.
What is Capcom?
The Capital Expenditure Committee.
We have not, but I'd be happy to reach out to them.
I think that would be if we're looking at capital expenditures, that would be a good place to go. Because they're trying to look out and do future expenditures.
And is there a relationship between the school department, capital improvements folks, and Capcom, or are they separate?
They are separate.
Who would be a good point of contact?
Heather Ford is the chair.
I know Heather, I can reach out to her. Great, thank you.
And likewise, have you interacted with the school committee on these issues?
Have we met with the school committee on these issues? We worked out a memorandum of understanding. So, you know, I should say there's a private fundraising side to all this. So we've had fairly lengthy discussions with the school committee about a year and a half ago, sort of pre-COVID, just pre-COVID, where we worked out some details. They're fully aware of what's going on. We have both the superintendent and a school committee member sitting on the committee.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else, a member of the public, who's interested in speaking on something that's not on the agenda? Great, then I think what we're going to do is we're going to actually take the next item out of order. We're going to address the Tobacco Hill presentation next and leave the finance-related updates until after that. So I believe we have Larry Smith on the line, if you're ready.
I am. Thank you, Christina. And if you don't mind, there are two of my colleagues in the audience, if you could promote them. Jill Mann is one, and Julia Dickinson is the other.
Okay, we're working on that.
Great.
More.
Right now, we have two of you.
All right, good to go.
Well, most people run away from two of me.
There we go.
Yeah, I see Jill and I see Julia there as well. So thank you very much. So first of all, thanks for the opportunity to speak this evening. Again, my name is Larry Smith, and I am the Managing Director of Restoration Capital, and we specialize in plus 55 real estate development. We built a number of these on the North Shore, and just to give you a little bit of background, we built a 34-unit community in Gloucester called the Village at West Gloucester. On the other side of Gloucester, a 45-unit senior housing community known as the Village at Magnolia Shores. In Amesbury, along the Merrimack River, we built 45 units of, and by the way, these are all within the last decade, 45 units known as Hatter's Point. And then on the other side of Hamilton, I hope some of you know us, we built 23 units known as the Village at Canterbury Farms. So we'll soon to be completing the 23 units at the Village at Canterbury Farms. I'd like to discuss the financial aspects of the senior housing development as it relates to town finances. And by the way, thanks for letting my other team members in with us. They're going to speak in just a short while. But we're really here to talk about 133 Essex Street, known as the Village at Tobacco Hill, which is a 50-unit plus 55 community with an entrance along Tobacco Road. And when I'm done with my quick introduction, I'll pass this over to Jill Mann, our permitting attorney, who has some FinCom experience as well. So I think she has some pretty good insight into this. Before I discuss the financial aspects and benefits of 133 Essex Street, you may be aware that our project has some opposition, and we believe the opposition is unfounded since this project offers a perfect balance between land preservation and financial benefits to the town of Hamilton. The more I read and go back and look at previous presentations from the housing production plan, this always seems to be, it's difficult to find a balance of housing that's going to generate revenue and preservation. And I'll just give you a few preservation benefits. We're not here to talk about that, but I think it's good background to have the FinCom understand a little bit about that. The community, first of all, we screen from Essex Street. The nearest building structure is located almost 1,000 feet away from Essex Street, across the farmland and through the wooded area. So thereby it really is preserving the view corridor, which we understand is so important to the town of Hamilton. The land that we have under agreement is 66 acres. We're only developing 16 of the 66 acres, whereby 50 acres of the undeveloped space will be in a perpetual conservation restriction. Thereby, these 50 acres will never be developed in the future. This means preserving the wooded area, the farmland, and the wetlands. And the farmland off of Essex Street will be preserved for agriculture. Also important to the preservation is trails will be created within the community and in connectivity to the Chewbacca Woods trails. And we're also constructing a trailhead parking area. Now, the real reason we're here tonight, and by the way, you could stop and interrupt me at any time and ask a question. Our team, again, is happy to answer any questions you might have. So now to discuss the financial benefits of our two developments in town. Just to let you know, we're no stranger to generating real estate tax benefits to the town of Hamilton. At Canterbury, our senior housing will generate over $350,000 in annual real estate taxes. And we provided in an email I sent to Christine, I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but we provided a spreadsheet, it's actually a PDF, calculating the real estate tax revenue based on the sales price for the newly recorded deeds at Canterbury. It's important to note that the real estate taxes generated from these senior housing developments are actual funds that, from a layman's standpoint, goes to the bottom line of the town, since there's no burden at all on town services. And what does that actually mean? It means that no children attend the school system because nobody under the age of 18 is allowed to live at a plus 55 community. Snow removal is paid for by the homeowners association. Road maintenance and trash removal is also provided by the condo association. There is a de minimis expense to the police and fire departments within the town. So for focusing on 133 Essex Street, a real estate development will generate over $700,000 in annual real estate taxes when completed. And again, with no burden on the town services. And I don't begin to understand your town budgets, but I would assume there's no opportunity to generate over $7,000 a year that would go to the bottom line of the town with no burden on any of the services. There's also a one-time fee of $325,000 for building permits and other fees as well when you develop a project of 50 units. And we'll be contributing $2.2 million to the Affordable Housing Trust. And that's up from $1.4 million that was in the document I sent over a few weeks ago. So that has increased per our negotiations with the planning board. Excuse me.
Larry, can you say that number
So we
again?
believe-
Sorry.
Sure.
Sorry, can you just say that
Is it
number
possible?
again? What was the number?
Yes. The number is $2.2 million. We'll be contributing to the Affordable Housing Trust. That's over the life of the project. There's a formula in the bylaw that has us paying increments of, I believe it's $365,000 as we take out building permits, excuse me. So I'd like to turn it over to Jill Mann now, who will give you a little bit more insight. But I hope you find that this is a very unique opportunity to the town of Hamilton. And again, I just want to emphasize the financial benefits to the town and also the preservation of open space as well. Jill, you could jump in if you can.
Sure thing. Good evening, Jill Mann from Man and Man. I'm legal counsel for Chewbacca Hill Capital Partners, and I just want to say thank you so much for allowing us to be here. I know this is a very busy time for you, and I realize everybody's a volunteer. As Larry said, I too shared your experience as a finance committee member. I was on the Middleton Finance Committee for 17 years, and that's a long time and a long commitment. So I do appreciate your efforts, and I do understand them. So I'm going to be really brief. So essentially, everybody's asking, why are you here? Okay, we can read about everything that you've just told us from the planning board, but why are you here? For a couple of reasons. One very important reason to Larry, to Julia, and to me, is to demonstrate the fact that this developer is committed to being a good partner with the town. When we come into a development, as you saw with Canterbury, we do so with an eye toward what does the town need and how can we service that. Larry truly is dedicated to affordable housing. If we could have put affordable housing on this particular subdivision and built it into the fiber of the community, we would have, but we're prohibited from doing that because of a policy that doesn't allow 55 and older communities to prohibit young people from living there. They're dedicated to allowing that, so they won't allow us to do it and still have you count on your ISH the affordable units. So what it ends up being best for a community is for us to contribute. And that amount is, as was stated a couple of times, because it is a shocking number to hear, is in excess of $2.2 million. And that goes right to your trust, and that most certainly is sufficient to create and probably construct the 6 units that otherwise would have been provided on site. But again, we're committed to being a partner. We want this development to look good. You drive by Canterbrook, you see it, it's well maintained. The houses have beautiful, architectural features. You don't walk by and it's not row housing. They have architectural depth and interest. The landscaping has depth and interest. It's a great development that really works into the fiber. And that's what we want to do at Essex Street. Larry had mentioned there's opposition. There's always opposition. I've been doing this job for a long time too. I've done it in your community many times, helping out the town a couple of times and just developing in town. And I understand we meet with opposition, but we seek to come to this type of a board because we're looking for an objective viewpoint based on the benefits that we truly bring, based on the facts that we will present to you and that are readily available. And that is also part of bringing high quality development. So we don't just bring these fiscal benefits that obviously are important, especially when you're a FinCom member, but we also bring other economic benefits because we bring residents who are of the age who have time to volunteer. These are people who sit on boards like this. When you get to a point where you're at the end of your careers, you don't have children at home, you seek to be involved in a community, and that's the type of resident that truly looks out for Larry's development because those are the people he sells to. Why else are we here? Clearly, it's to gain your support, or at least to give you the information so that you can make a determination as to whether or not you want to support us. And we hope that you can, because you're part of the governing body of the town of Hamilton, and we think it's exceptionally important to get your support and to give you all the facts that we have. Look, like Larry said about what are the economics. I remember being on the FinCom and looking at it and saying, okay, we have our 2.5 levy limit. We can't raise taxes in order to do it. How much growth are we going to have? And I'm sure when we came forward and we said, we're going to give you $750,000 of growth, which actually matches what you can raise on your 2.5 levy, because you're at $32 million a year for your budget. So we're going to match that, and we're not going to bring any burdens to you. Clearly, we'll end up calling the police every once in a while. Maybe there'll be a call for an emergency vehicle, but the real burdens, right? The school, which is 65%, more actually, because I didn't even include the insurance. We don't generate anything there, and we don't generate any demand on your DPW department because there's no plowing, no services for trash, there's no repairs of the roadway, and there's no installation of a roadway after a certain period of time. There's no maintenance of the stormwater systems because we have a condominium that takes all that burden away from you. So, we're looking to see if this board is going to recognize those benefits and to tell us how you feel. I'm looking for some input from you. If you think there's something we can do that's a benefit, we'd love it. Unfortunately, this development isn't going to come to you in time for this year's budget, but we will have one-time revenues that will hit hopefully, if we get approved this year. So you're going to see about $350,000 in one-time revenues that'll offset the costs, for your planning departments and your other inspectional services department. And then hopefully starting 2023, 2024, you're going to see that big bump in taxes, which I think the development probably with 50 units, as Larry had mentioned, is probably, Larry, it'll take what, maybe 3 years, 4 years to really build out so that you get to the max tax base?
That's right. That's right. And we think we underestimated the potential tax.
Oh, I'm sure you did, because I looked at the tax rate and it's gone up. And when we assess it, I mean, the FinCom knows that firsthand. They understand that rise in income. But the whole point is yes, we don't immediately hit the 750, but as you all know, the assessor's going to grab us. The second we get a building permit, we're going to start to get taxed. And what the beauty of a development like this is, what the value of a cluster development is, and I remember looking at these, is that we only eat a very small portion of the land. So these 50 units are going to sit on 16 and a half acres, but you're going to tax them like they sit on the whole 66. That's how the assessor is going to work. But we're still going to give you that farmland, which is right on Essex Street, which is part of the bucolic beauty of Hamilton. And then we're also going to give you, 40 acres of open space. We're going to preserve vernal pools. We're going to preserve many conservation aspects. We're going to create trails. We're going to create habitat for animals. We're going to maintain wildlife corridors. And again, bring in a lot of money, which is the best benefit of all when you're talking to a board like this. So just to wrap it up and to not continue to belabor the point, because I saw how big your agenda was tonight. If you have questions, we'd love to answer them. And I'm just hopeful that we can get your support and that you can, give us that and spread the word that you think that this is actually in the best interest of the community. Thank you very much, and I greatly appreciate your time this evening.
Hey, Larry, John McGrath, how are you?
Hi, John. I'm good, John. How you doing tonight?
Do you know if the land is currently generating tax revenue?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it's generating. Julia, I think you have that number. Is it $28,000 a year?
It is 28, yes.
I believe so, yeah.
I looked, it is.
So pretty de minimis compared to what the development would generate.
28,000?
That's correct.
Exactly, yeah, it's valued as developable land, but I think the value it shows in the assessor's website when I looked was $1.5 million.
Okay, thanks.
So yeah, we're going to raise that substantially.
And Larry, could you characterize how far along in the approval process you are? Like, just give us a thumbnail sketch of where you think you are.
I could do that. So on the Conservation Commission, and by the way, for the Conservation Commission, we have no permanent disturbance within the 100-foot buffer. We are in front of the Conservation Commission with a notice of intent to have a temporary crossing and bring do some horizontal drilling. And we hope to have that finalized within the next 30 days. On the planning board, we've been at it for quite some time. We believe Rick Mitchell, planning board chair, has done a very good job kind of corralling everybody and keeping them focused on how to move forward. And Jill, what would you think? Do you think we'd have another 2 months to 3 months left?
So Mr. McGrath, we actually had a good meeting last night and we made a lot of progress. The planning board members collectively created this rubric so that they could have a much better approach, because I think, as you know, the board does not have a lot of veteran members, so it's really important they understand the process. So that's why it's been taking us longer. I would love to say 2 months, but because it's a holiday schedule, maybe we're looking at 3 months.
Okay, thanks.
Of course.
Anybody else, any questions?
Yes, I guess there's a major concern with water runoff.
Sure.
And
I can answer that.
the issues of the ledge and what kind of impact it would have on the surrounding homes and on the lakes up there.
Sure. May I, Mr. Smith? It's okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Jill.
So, and you know what, those are always good and reasonable concerns. So relative to runoff, this particular project must comply with your local stormwater management policies as well as the DEP stormwater management policies. I'll get into the ledge stuff too, but let's just talk about that. So we have designed this entire site with regard to runoff, right? So we remove trees, we create impervious areas. We must corral that water to ensure that we don't change the watershed, so that we continue not only to provide water to those things that support the infrastructure, water goes into the aquifer, but also that we don't increase the rate of runoff going off so that we don't create flooding, and we do that. And we're in the process of completing our review with your peer review engineer, and we will comply completely with stormwater. People always raise this issue because they always say it's a problem, but the reason they say it's a problem 90% of the time is because they abut homes in developments that never had to comply. So before 2006, you had single-family homes that could be built anywhere and never had to comply. And the amount of damage they do to adjacent properties is not minimal. Our development will be completely controlled and will not create any damage to any property relative to runoff. Now, with regard to your question about, the ledge, we have a lot of ledge on the property. If you've ever driven by, we have to have some ledge removal. We need to create a flat surface. But that's, again, the beauty of doing a cluster development, because we brought it all in. Instead of having openings everywhere like you would with a conventional subdivision, because you would not only put in a roadway, but you would have lots on those streets, so you'd have driveways. We're making one entrance point. So we do come in and we do remove some ledge. But when you remove ledge, everybody's afraid of the pond, all the ponds that are adjacent to us. We are over 1,000 feet away from the Manchester water supply. Matter of fact, I think it's 2,500 feet away. With regard to Beck Pond, with regard to all of the other ponds, and I apologize not being able to remember them all, we have absolutely no effect. The water level and the depth of those and where we are actually removing ledge will have no impact. And we did, in fact, provide a response to a peer review engineer that the town had hired, and we provide a full review of the impacts to the project, how we control that, and we basically make sure that all the ledge removal that will be undertaken will have absolutely no effect on adjacent homes, on adjacent wells, or on any of your water supply. And in fact, Manchester's water supply manager, I think, you have the manager of the water departments. He actually said there's no impact at all, that we're over 2,000 something feet away, and we'll have no effect on their aquifers. And where and how we're removing ledge will have no effect on the water supply that will go to private wells or any public wells. Again, everybody makes those comments. Everybody's always afraid of what is the unknown, and I understand, and that's why we want to go through the process slowly and carefully and deliberately with the board of the planning board and with your town's independent consultants, so that we provide that assurance, because we are sure that we are not going to have any harmful effect on the environment or our neighbors. I hope that answered your question.
Jill, could I just add, we also did a hydrology study on the property as well.
Oh, I apologize. Yes, we did.
Which is part of the documentation that's in peer review as we speak.
Thank you, Larry.
You're welcome, Jill. You worked pretty hard on that hydrology report.
Very hard, yes.
I think we have another question.
Good evening, and thank you for being with us tonight. Can you tell us how many residents are you anticipating? What will be the population?
So
Sure.
you want to hear into that? Go ahead, Larry.
Well, so with 50 units, first of all, it's only 2 bedrooms. We have, so we've built at the 4 communities I just mentioned, we built approximately 150 units. Only one time did we have 3 people living in a unit, and that's when a 20-year-old something needed a place to stay with his parents for a year. But besides that, 20 to 25% of the units have single people living, usually widows, and the rest of the units, the other 75%, are 2 people.
So
Pretty,
actually equals what?
consistent within all our communities, including Canterbury.
Right, so-
We expect no more, we probably expect about 80 people total, but we always defer to say, 2 bedrooms, you assume a master and then a visitor. So we just tell people it's 2 when we do the math. So for example, when we did the calculations for water consumption, which is a huge concern, right? Everybody's raising the fact that there's water consumption issues. And I know as the finance committee, you get a lot of this information. Your water, you guys have a permit, a beautiful permit to withdraw 1 million gallons a day. You only withdraw I think not even 600,000 gallons a day. So you have so much room in your withdrawal permit. And this particular development, for example, will only generate less than 6,500 gallons of withdrawal a day. And that's at maximum capacity for those units. But most likely it'll be at about 5,000 gallons per day. So we aren't even, for purposes of the finance committee, I can say that we're like it's somewhere between 25 and 50 basis points with regard to how much water you even have in your permit. So at every level, the impact of this particular type of development is minimal. And if this were conventional, I think as you well know, we would anticipate 2 adults and probably 2 children based on what your demographic is in Hamilton because of the way you have the breakdown with, majority of 3-bedroom homes and 4-bedroom homes. So, with a traditional conventional subdivision, you probably have somewhere about 14 to 15,000 gallons of consumption and anywhere between 120 and 130 people in this particular development. Does that answer that question a little bit better?
I forgot what my question was.
You know what? Never give a lawyer a platform. Your question was, how many people do you think? We think probably about 80, but we always say 100 because it's a 2-bedroom unit, and we assume a married couple in the unit with a
Thank you.
visit.
There is currently a debate in town about water and the future of our water supply. It's true we're drawing less than permitted, but there's a concern about water source going forward. I just wanted you to be aware of that dynamic.
Oh, I saw, that where you're going to drill your wells, right? Because you have a couple of wells that have some damage.
I don't know that it's been determined as yet, but so, did you say earlier, Larry, that the nearest neighbor is 1,000 feet? Did I hear?
No, it's 1,000, the first structure, when I mentioned 1,000 feet, is 1,000 feet away from Essex Street. So basically the view corridor, which is so important to the town of Hamilton, will be maintained. I think the closest resident is probably across Chabaco Road. And Jill, it's probably 250 feet away.
I always want to say from our entrance drive. I never like to say from dwelling to dwelling because it's important to do that. So from our entrance, like where our street would intersect with Chabaco, it's about 250 to the closest, and it might even be further back, but that's an estimate.
So approximately how many existing homes are that proximate to the boundary?
Well, one home is 250. There might be 3 homes that are within 500 feet. There's other aspects, but there's not many.
All right, so
Because it's just so distant away. You have like the home right across the street is on a big lot, and because there's Beck Pond, you have a very large setback. And because those lots across the street are GPOD, they're all 80,000 square feet.
what I'm awkwardly getting at is, have you attempted to engage with abutters?
I
Oh, we
can
have
answer the
engaged.
question. Yes, we had a community outreach meeting at the beginning of this. We had about 30 abutters come to that community outreach meeting, and we presented everything, and they're not necessarily happy, but we have reached out before, to answer your question.
Are you able to mitigate any of their concerns?
I don't think we're there yet, and I think that's a very good question. we always have an open communication. We attempted to form a trail committee, and there was really no volunteers that stepped forward from the abutters to help us out defining the trails on the property. So we've engaged at times, and hopefully we'll engage again in the future. But right now, I would say there's no
I'd
engagement.
respectfully suggest that some effort be made in that regard. I think it's important for us, given the fact that we're a fairly small community. Often people come forward after the fact to voice their concern and might be a bit reticent to engage completely. So I would respectfully suggest that a significant effort be made in terms of outreach. I think that would be generally helpful in terms of your image in the community.
On a related question, if I can step in, throughout the planning board process, and certainly as opposition amongst some in the community has been raised, have there been any changes to your initial proposal or plan? It's similar to sort of whether there's been any mitigation, but if you could talk to any changes in that actual plan or proposal, that would be great.
Sure. So, Larry, do you want me to handle this, or?
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
So yeah, of course we have. You know, we've been talking with them extensively and about certain aspects with regard to landscaping, where in fact we locate the homes, and we are working diligently to actually address those concerns. You know, we want to reach out. We want to have reasonable requests that we can meet. And the second they ask for those, and some of the planning board members have actually asked for certain very reasonable mitigation measures that make sense, that make it better for the community, because it makes it better for the abutters. So we're doing those now, you know, like trying to provide larger buffers along Chabaco so that the viewscape when you go down Chabaco, and you're going to have a driveway, you're going to have a roadway coming in. That's the way it is. You have a roadway where Essex Street is, there's going to be a road. But what we're trying to do is adjust that viewscape so that you don't see so clearly the homes off of that, and that's what we're working on right now. It just takes time to do those types of revisions to the plans, because when one change, believe it or not, triggers another change, triggers another change, triggers another change. So those engineered plans need time to, you know, for lack of a better term, gel. And that's what we're in the process of now. And we like to turn the plan not many times, but one final time, or one with large improvements. So that's why we're in the process now, and I can't give you those plans, or I'd show you them.
Gotcha. No, but I think that's just to reiterate David's point. I think that's an important part of this, that, you know, that there's a process in the sense of trying to mitigate as many concerns as possible.
We agree.
Because I think,
and you know, even like some of the big concerns, right? Because one of you had actually brought up about storm water and the drainage and the impact. You know, we're going to ask every single solitary person to allow us to put, you know, go through their home for a survey to say, look, at this ledge removal isn't going to impact you. So we'll go through and do what they call a survey. You check, you make sure the property's good. Whatever changes, you know, there's an insurance policy, and there's us that would remediate for anything. We're putting up seismographs, we're putting in wells, we're doing all kinds of things to mitigate concern, because the concerns truly aren't founded, but that doesn't help make people feel secure. So we're putting in place good measures, reports, and we're hiring third parties to ensure that people feel comfortable, because I agree with what you're saying. We need to make the abutters feel good about the project, and we need to be able to provide responsible, reasonable answers to their questions and mitigate their reasonable requests and concerns. And we're working toward doing that.
Great, thank you.
Very welcome.
May I ask another area? Have you consulted with the protective service people in town about any impact? I know, Larry, you said you believe the cost would be de minimis for police and fire. I think you said that. But have you engaged with the police and fire chiefs as to practical aspects traffic flow, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. We've met with the fire chief a number of times to make sure that the fire truck, the largest truck in their fleet, is able to get up the roadways, turn around. We've talked to the fire department also about water pressures and the fire hydrants. So the fire chief is very much part of this. And the police chief has just really weighed in after seeing the drawings. He really hasn't been an integral part because I don't think there are that many concerns. But in fire protection, there are many boxes we have to check per the codes, and we continue to do that.
But we also do, the fire department, the police department does check in relative to the traffic report. And before we even went before the planning board for the first time, we submitted a full traffic report explaining the impacts of this development. Because again, you're going to have a roadway, you're going to have additional cars on the road, but how many additional cars, what type of traffic is it, and all of that. And we actually have a report that demonstrates that the impact during peak hours and even all through the day is de minimis and won't negatively affect the traveled ways at all. And we provided that and even offered some mitigation issues. Like I know you need some traffic lines painted and some signs in certain places. So those types of traffic mitigation were suggested, even though we will not contribute to any of the issues, it's still always offered. And that's something that your fire and police department typically do review, because all of that stuff goes to them and it gets departmental reviews when it's initially submitted.
Remember, you're putting a lot more senior drivers on the road.
Let me tell you, hey, listen, I'm 58, that's me. Better senior drivers than 16-year-olds. But I know.
I thank you for your courtesy. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other questions right now? I don't think we have any more questions right now. I really appreciate you coming and giving us this information. And if we have any questions come up, I'm sure we'll have further discussion about these issues.
Definitely.
I've got your contact
So
information.
I'd just like to leave stating that, again, if just you can remember, I know I'm being a little repetitive, but the opportunity, the tax revenue increase to the town is well over $700,000. The $2.2 million that goes to the Affordable Housing Trust, the $325,000 that will go, the one-time $325,000 for fees. Because we might come back to you at some point and just ask if there's a way you could support us maybe through the planning board. We're not asking that tonight unless you want to volunteer, but we believe this committee, of all committees in town, would benefit the most. Not that your committee would benefit, but the town would benefit through what this committee does. So we will leave you with that.
Thank you very much for your time. I greatly appreciate it. If anybody has any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out. We're available at any time for any questions you may have. And everybody have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
You also.
Great.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Have
Bye-bye.
a good night.
Bye now.
Good night.
Thank you.
Are they able to see us as we see that?
Only in the,
You see that view right there? That's what they see.
I look
so
better,
we
I
don't
look
have
better
anyone
from a
else in the,
distance.
is there anyone else in the,
No.
nobody else even attended? Good. I mean, not good, but good I didn't skip anyone. I just suddenly realized someone else might want to say something, but apparently not.
Yeah, I mean, and on that note, I would say, we may want to reach out to the sort of opposition, or at least the Save Tobacco Trails organization.
Yeah,
To get their viewpoint and, see if it's
yeah.
changed at all as the process has gone on. Before, I would even consider us making any sort of recommendation. I'd certainly want to hear from all sides.
Yeah, and I don't know whether anything at all would be appropriate for us to sort of
Yeah.
tell anyone, if there's something to make a recommendation on at town meeting, obviously that's what we do.
Yeah.
Just specifically as to the planning board, I'm sure if the planning board asked us to, we would give them our input.
There's no town meeting action,
I
right?
don't think there have to be. I
No.
think it's just
No.
in front of the planning board.
No, right.
There's nothing. no
I think it was a
bylaw.
good recommendation for them to engage,
Oh, yes.
actively. And I got the sense he kind of hesitated on that point a bit, like, oh, yeah, we did, but maybe he was thinking real time, maybe we should be doing more of that. So to your point, I'm wondering if they're doing that in the planning board, because that's scheduled, that's a forum for people to come in and,
Yeah, no, a lot of that's going on, and
Yeah.
and it is sort of it's a process where a lot of issues and concerns are raised, and
Yeah.
then the question is, you almost have to take a step back and see, over the course of time, have a lot of those concerns been
addressed.
alleviated, and
Yeah.
they spoke to the fact that they've tried to, do all sort of reasonable mitigation, but reasonable minds can differ on what reasonable is. So that's why I think it'd be interesting to hear from those that are part of that organization that is, I think, still opposed to it.
Yeah.
Just as a more fact-finding, regardless of any sort of, formal or informal recommendation that we
Yeah.
make.
Definitely, yeah.
Be interesting to
'cause
see
I-
if he does do anything.
Does anybody have any contacts in that group, or
Um,
know who they are?
I know a neighbor, I could probably reach
Yeah,
out to
I
them.
think my wife knows a couple people, and they have a website. I mean, it's an organization. I know they recently, one of their
Yeah.
their bigger members, unfortunately, was passed away in a really tragic cycling accident.
Oh, was he in that?
Yeah, down in
Yeah.
in Texas.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it'd be relatively easy to find who the couple members that would probably want to.
Does
Attend a future
somebody
meeting.
want to take that on, like getting a contact and making a contact and then inviting them to come?
I'll contact the person I know and see who
Okay,
they can give me more information.
yep. And if you can figure out who a contact person would be, and then see if they can come to our next meeting, put it on our agenda, or
Okay.
if not the next meeting, whenever.
Perfect.
And Christina, I think we might want to consider, after we fact-find sufficiently to be comfortable coming up with some judgment, communicating that to the other boards that are involved with this, be it the conservation or planning or ZBA, or maybe the ZBA is not involved. I mean, we're spending our time and gaining knowledge, and it might be responsible to just communicate that.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you're saying express our point of view,
Yes, if
other than there really is no,
town meeting.
there's no town meeting
Right.
vote or even, yeah.
And, I mean, I don't know to what extent the planning board could take that into consideration, or
Yeah.
the Concom, right? They have their
Yeah.
things that they need to look at, and
Well, that's
decisions
up
that
to
need to be
them,
based on it, but
but
yeah.
at least we might express ourselves.
Yeah,
Yeah, because we could, I'm a big fan of scenario analysis, and we could say, okay, here's his scenario. Here are two other scenarios, one more favorable and one less favorable. And you could sort of express a point of view just using the numbers.
Right.
Like, could you think of a better development in terms of just the numbers of people and financial burden on the town? So there's probably two or three aspects of what they're saying financially. And is there a more positive profile that could be drawn?
At some point,
I don't know.
if not at this stage with this development, if there are others, there will be incremental impacts on police and fire, even if not on school. With
Yeah.
increased responsibility, increased traffic, increased
Yeah.
population.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. You're sort of looking at this a bit in a vacuum, Whereas I think,
Right.
our approach is generally to take that step back, but this is a good sort of
Yeah.
test case because, the question is, okay, if not this development, what other developments? And is this, are enough concessions made or is there enough mitigation
Yeah.
where, at least from our point of sort of bigger picture view, this is a responsible development versus,
Yeah.
something that could actually happen that would be much worse for the town.
Right, that's my point, yeah. Yeah.
So.
So we could maybe help draw out and paint that picture, and just sort of bring it alive, because basically he talked a lot about it. The number of units, and then David said, okay, how many people could be there? Well, it could be a whole lot worse.
Yes.
I don't know how much better it could be, because it's a pretty small number of people. So now you start talking about the impact to the environment.
Yeah, I think the fiscal data seems positive.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But what else is out there that maybe we don't know?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So maybe.
Well, and I guess
over-
there's two things. One is what would be the alternative here in this particular spot?
Right.
But also, I think what somebody was saying is, if we did the same thing in other places also, what would the aggregate impact be on the town? I think that's what you were saying.
Yes.
Right, exactly.
So they're
Yeah.
saying, well, this is a minimal impact, but it's some impact, and so if you do the same thing everywhere. So if we did the same thing everywhere and it started to have a larger impact, we would need to make sure that we get more concessions or whatever, so
Right.
that it's sort of the template for
Yeah.
what would happen in the future or
One of the
precedent.
positive things that I heard him say was that the land that's not being developed is basically going to be frozen as open space.
Right.
Which is a great benefit, but I'm wondering legally, could that be flipped at some point in the future? Or is that one and done?
It's a really good follow-up question, because that's an important one. Is it in trust, so to speak, or is it just,
Could the association vote to
right?
develop some more land and put some money in their pocket?
Right. No, that's a good question for follow-up, because I had sort of taken the, assumption that it was more of like a conservation trust, so it couldn't be developed, but
You may have said that,
I'm
it's in
not sure if
trust
that
and
was,
we're golden, right?
I think so, but.
Yeah, I mean, there are ways to do it so that it couldn't be
Yeah.
undone, but we would,
right,
it would have, we would want to make sure, or the town, whoever would want to make
Right.
sure that it was done correctly so that it couldn't be undone,
and
yeah.
I also assume there's nothing to that effect on the property right now,
Yeah.
Right.
that it's completely developable.
What do you think?
I think it's the fiscal impact seems very positive, but there seems to be strong opposition. It's important to weigh that before making a decision.
Right.
That, just for our note taker, Harry is it Philip or Phillips?
Philip,
Harry Phillip is here. That was him speaking.
We're auditioning for him.
Yes.
well, I'm auditioning for you.
See if we pass muster.
All right, well, that was great, but we'll have more chances to talk about this, so maybe we should go on if everybody's ready.
I think that makes sense.
So the next or prior thing was any finance-related updates? Town manager and/or finance director.
Oh.
Sitting
Yeah.
to my right.
Hi. I don't have any specific updates tonight beyond, there's a brief presentation on Patent Homestead income and expenses, an idea of what we're working on in the finance department. We had our tax classification and rate setting hearing on Monday evening to set the actual tax rate for fiscal '22, which we are currently in the midst of. The projected rate for FY '22, which we had based our first 2 quarters of tax bills on, was $17.86 per $1,000 of property valuation. The actual rate came in 2 cents higher at $17.88 per thousand. So We're very close on our projection, so those of you at home, your actual tax bills will be, the median home tax bill will be roughly $10 more for the second 2 quarters. So please prepare for that. The
One question I had on that, Alex, is the 2-cent increase compared to what we sort of projected when we passed the budget last spring. Certainly, obviously in line with that. But I think if I've got the numbers correctly, because I looked at them after the meeting on Monday, property values went up by like 2.5%.
Mhm.
But I think we'd only projected that they were going to go up by 2%.
Mhm.
So the delta is actually, in a sense, like if you held expenses constant, actually the tax rate would have gone down.
Correct. Yep.
So I was curious as to what caused that 2% increase, because it was effectively more than a 2% increase in a sense. Obviously, like the election stuff we did at the past STM would have contributed to that, but I couldn't think of what other things. Because I think it might have been a couple $100,000 if I did the math correctly, which I may not have.
It's about $200,000.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of information goes into forming this number. The total levy, I think, was top of my head, 31,830 something thousand.
Right.
And so I don't know the exact detail right now. I can.
Yeah, and I actually didn't necessarily expect like an answer right on the spot. It was more that I actually used the model and quickly sort of ran the math through. So it was also a test for me to see if the model actually
Sure, yeah.
was working. But then the question is sort of what were the differences there? And I'm sure it's something that's probably easily explainable, but it's more curiosity.
Hey, I was very curious myself. I was expecting it to come in actually a little under the estimated number.
Right.
And it didn't. So those have been submitted and not yet certified by the DLS. That process follows those hearings. And so we're assuming that we've triple checked.
Right.
And this is my first time going through this, with the town. And so it's been an arduous process. But, a lot of help from a lot of different people around town in the finance department, the various divisions, so.
Do you have the sort of breakdown of how that's calculated? Because I'm sure it's something that we assumed last spring. There's either additional expenses, or it's just assumption that we made last spring that was different, turned out different than.
It's likely tied to additional expenses. There's an awful lot of information that goes into the DLS Gateway, which is the sort of magic state website that spits this number out for us. So I can't point to any single thing, but it's likely tied to expenses coming in higher.
Yeah.
Or revenue lower?
That's something that we looked at. Revenues came in over our sort of our budgeted amount, which is what we had planned for.
So that'll be
So
expense.
it's tied to expense. I'm pretty positive. Our revenues came in just under 4% over what we had sort of projected and based these, based our budgeting on. So. And that was, it's sort of scattered across different categories. Some were higher than others and some were lower. And some FY21 revenue still continues to come in today based on, like real estate taxes is one where we're, moving after delinquent real estate taxes, that sort of thing. And that money still continues to sort of come in today.
Can we add John's question to your meager list of to-do?
We can. I'll get to it at some point. I will. We are digging through this, and
I know you've got a lot of stuff going on. It's more of a curiosity in the functioning as opposed to, because I think it's also a good lesson as to how the sort of municipal finance works in a sense of what affects, because and part of this is going back whenever we would always push certainly if some of you on the committee remember, Marissa, we'd always push her for the indicative tax rate when we did the, at ATM. She was always really hesitant. And, it was always, we know this could change before it's actually certified. And so we'd always would get a tax rate out of her. But it is good to understand what kind of things might actually affect that change. Specific things that you might not think of, even sort of expenses where it's like, okay, well, this is an expense that we're always going to estimate it, and it's never going to be exact, so it could actually fluctuate by several $100,000. I'm not sure. Whatever the answer might be, I think might be instructive to us when we put out these sort of indicative tax rate estimates at ATM.
Yeah, if I can get my finger on it and figure out exactly what sort of the cause, or there's probably a couple of different causes would be my guess, but if I can figure out what it is, we'll unravel it and I'll walk us through it as soon as I am able to.
Okay, that'd be great.
But, we will be, this is something that we will be working through with our DLS rep to figure out, once they certify things, obviously they'll say, yes, this looks great, move forward. But there are more things that we're going, so we have to submit our balance sheet, and that is what will end up producing our free cash number, which will get certified, and our Schedule A is coming right up. It's right around the corner. So we have like a season of entering these things, and we're like probably 2/3 of the way through it right now, and it's the last couple weeks, the recap is the big one, and it's been a lot of work. Diane has been fantastic. She's been a lot of help. Jane in the assessor's office has been great. Our board of assessors has been helpful. So it's been a team approach to get it all done. So
great.
Alice, I did not attend Monday. The new home median value.
I think it went up by about $7,000. I think it's $629,000 and change.
Thank you.
Okay, so beyond the DLS information, we're also in the front end of budget season, as you guys all know. So right now, department heads are working on their FY23 budget requests, and they're projecting that out, gathering expenses. So that process will begin to accelerate here in the next couple weeks. We've asked them following Thanksgiving to have those requests in. Joe and I will review them, and then we'll begin meeting with our liaisons with each one of you with the various departments you're assigned with. Where we'll review budget requests, and then we will put together sort of a projection of our 23 expenses. So that is ongoing. In addition to sort of those standard requests that they're making, we're also asking all of our department heads to work on, and I've talked about this before, but more of a budget narrative that explains to the public what it is that these tax dollars that we're spending, what sort of a mission they're working towards, what kind of services they're providing to the town and to the residents. Sort of a more holistic look at budgeting rather than just simply numbers, a spreadsheet. So it's been going fine so far. I would expect that there will be speed bumps along the way, but I'm having a couple at Chief Stevens' suggestion, a couple of sort of working sessions next week for department heads to drop in with me in the memorial room here to work through any questions that they have and offer any expertise I can. So a couple just sort of little 2-hour blocks where I'll set up shop in here, and people can drop in with their laptop and we'll work through their questions that they have. So it's a very busy time of year for us here in finance world. So yeah, that's the latest, I suppose.
Alex, question. Joe sent us an email on the ARPA.
Yep.
And he's got 2 items sort of on the fast track for approval.
Yep.
So he's going back to the select board in a couple of weeks. And then he has a drop dead December 20 date to respond to the low bidder on the water project. So all that
Yeah.
I assume he's going to come back and wants us to weigh in, because I think we've agreed that we're going to have a voice in.
Right.
So, anyway, in order to provide any kind of vote on, or point of view on the filtration project, I'd certainly like to sort of see the whole project, original bid, current bid, and sort of line by line why it's up.
Yeah.
Now, my understanding is the first piece was already discussed, approved, funded, and then, as we heard one of the select board members mention, the overage is, what, 140% of the original, so, anyway. Rather than wait for 2 weeks and then say, hey, can someone explain it to us, maybe he could send us the information, or we could talk about it, before the week's out here. Because he certainly looks like it's a fast track, and there's a financial commitment back to the low bid vendor. So anyway, as I was reading his email, I'm saying, well, he's, sounds like it's a good use of the money,
Yeah.
just because of the category.
Yeah.
But the
yeah.
bid seems wildly
High.
different, but,
Yeah.
It was also the low bid, like that.
right. So
They were
anyway,
much
so
worse.
if he wants it on the fast
Right,
track,
yeah.
maybe we could,
Not by,
yeah,
Yeah.
we could just get some more information, because I'm completely blind to the subject, so I wouldn't know what I'd vote on.
If we, I mean, I didn't really jump into ARPA stuff, but that's something that has been top of mind for
Yeah.
myself as well. And
Yeah,
so Joe and I gave a presentation to the select board on Monday night about
Right.
sort of ARPA in general, and then ARPA
oh yeah, I
locally.
attended, I listened to the whole thing.
yep.
Yep.
Me too.
And so, for those who didn't attend, the town has been awarded roughly $2.4 million in ARPA money, and ARPA is the American Rescue Plan Act that was signed. It's essentially a stimulus bill that was signed into law in, I believe, March of this year. And it provides for a number of things, but chief among them are some infrastructure projects, including water, sewer, wastewater, drainage, broadband. Those are the sort of infrastructure categories. And there are some other categories as well, such as, let's see here, ongoing pandemic response, premium pay for employees, which is something that's on our
That's a
list.
good
Yeah,
one.
I've been
Yep.
working on that as well. So there are a number of sort of categories, and then there are some excluded categories. You can't use it to, you can't put the money into a trust fund, you can't invest it, you can't use it to reduce your tax rate. So you can't really offset your budget with it. But, so
Pardon me, it has to be spent
it has
by
to be,
what time?
sure, it has to be, well, what, it's termed as it has to be committed by 2024, by the end of 2024, so December 31st of 2024, and then it has to be fully spent and reported on by the end of December 26. So my gut tells me that we will likely be done spending the money before then, especially because we have a very unique circumstance with this pre-filtration project we're discussing,
Right.
which is a water project that came in well over sort of what the projected budget was going to be. It falls smack into sort of one of the eligible use categories. It would make a lot of sense to use this kind of money for that kind of a project, especially when we're looking at overage. We'd have to borrow, likely have to borrow or put it on the water rate as ways to fund it. So,
Yep.
yes, the plan is to bring this to both the FinCom as well as the CAPCOM for consideration. I would imagine at I think December 1 is the next FinCom meeting. So likely then would make sense, and then the following week is the next select board Board of Selectmen meeting.
Right.
And so that timeline is kind of in my head, how it would play out.
Would it be Tim Olson who would be sort of the
Yes.
expert on this?
Tim would be the
Maybe we
project
should
expert.
contact Tim Olson and see if he can give us some written information, kind of background is what
I
you're
would-
asking for. Is to-
I would
Yeah.
think,
Invite him to the meeting, perhaps?
Yeah, but even, I think we might want
I'd-
information
if he can
before
send it
that.
ahead of the meeting,
Sure.
can you do that?
I can ask him.
Just,
Well, we
if he wants
can,
to ask.
yeah.
just so we can catch up
Sure.
to, like, what's he talking about? Yeah.
I think Nick is the
Nick is his liaison, yeah.
Yeah, because this, it's one of those things where, like, we've talked about this in the past, because it's actually been approved. It was just approved at a much lower amount.
Right.
So either way, we knew that we've recently come to find out that it was going to be a significant overage. The ARPA funds, while we have a lot of time to spend them, we've got to move on this bid, which, I think certainly in the short term, things are not getting less expensive. So
we actually got, were there 3 bids that came in?
yeah,
And this was the lowest of those.
by a significant amount, I think.
So that in and of itself
One was the
Right.
next closest.
tells you that,
The bidding environment for water construction projects is
Yeah.
going to be crazy for the next few years.
Yeah.
There are only a select number of firms that do this kind of work, so both the design, engineering, and then also the construction.
yeah,
This project is already designed, which gives us, gets us ahead of the curve in a sense, but
Right.
the contracting is going to be, these contractors who do this specialized work
yeah.
are going to be flooded with ARPA money.
ARPA, exactly, like
All-
the
every
Jack
town
yeah.
has it.
Yep.
They're being pushed to do this specific kind of work.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be a few years of, they're going to have a lot of work.
Yeah, I
They're gonna be
completely get it.
selective
I
about
just,
yeah. It was shocking to me, and I remain unhappy about the
Yeah.
sort of situation we find ourselves in. It's not great, but we luckily do have a way to fund this work without. So part of the problem is that we are also under a DEP sort of mandate to get this work
Right.
done.
Yeah,
So we
sure.
can't, ideally, we would just punt and wait on it for a few years until the bidding environment comes back down, but
anyway, I just thought I'd bring it up, and maybe he could educate us before we sit down and talk to him.
Yeah,
But-
and I'm because of the ARPA money, I'm not even sure it's like a couple of years. It's probably until about 2024 that the bidding's not going to calm down.
it'll be
Because
probably.
everybody else will have to come up with plans and.
Yeah, it'll be probably, my guess is it'll be through around 2024, 25 till. things
Right,
calm.
right when the ARPA money, like you either have to have it approved or you're never going to be able to use it, that it's going to calm down.
And that's not to mention, water infrastructure is also part of this, the latest infrastructure.
Infrastructure,
bill.
right,
And so It's
exactly.
a smaller portion amount, but it's
Yeah.
also included as an eligible use category.
Yeah.
So,
Good, thanks.
no problem.
Okay.
If I may, before we leave ARPA, I want to talk a bit about my request regarding employees in the town. I want to assure everyone I'm not proposing that we negotiate that. That's not our realm. But it seems to me that given the time of year, it might be a gracious thing if the town could determine what it's going to do in time for the holidays. I just remind everybody that the current CPI figure is above 6%. And our employees have year to year gotten 2%, behind the schools, which were higher. They worked through the pandemic. I won't go through the rationale. It just seems to me to be the fair thing to do, and I would urge you and the manager to look upon this in not only a generic favorable light, but in a quantitative favorable light. And I'll stop there.
It's something that we're working on.
Anybody else have thoughts about using the ARPA funds for personnel?
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable consideration that it needs to be done thoughtfully. But a lot of hardship around, and we don't want to forget the town employees and what they may have gone through, since it's specifically carved out in the funding. So I don't think we should turn a blind eye to the proposal, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
So.
I think it's it's certainly timely, whether we can potentially do it before the holidays, but I think it's something on the first, it would be great to talk about that as well. And I can't remember from Joe's email if he mentioned that as well for more immediate discussion, but I think we should plan on talking about that one there as well. As then the third thing I think was for the health initiatives, which I do like his approach, which is even though it may be earmarking more, that we wouldn't actually allocate a lot until, because I think that is a very unknown as to what those ongoing costs are going to be. It might be that full amount, but there's a decent chance it might not, so.
Yeah, they're variable, right? So
Right.
as we approach winter and likely flexing upward of COVID cases, then we're likely going to be spending more resources responding to it. And so
Right.
that's the kind of intention behind requesting sort of a pool of money for, specifically for the, sort of the public health response.
Yep.
So anyhow, we will be, Joe and I are, among others, are actively working on a premium pay proposal right now. It's something that I've been working on.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, just as a, for those that hadn't seen the meeting on Monday, I mean, there was a big universe of projects they looked at, but most of those projects wouldn't actually qualify for ARPA funds. So it's actually been boiled down to a relatively limited list of what actually could potentially qualify. And there's actually a bunch of other sort of water-related ones that are potentially on that list. I would certainly recommend if you can see that part of Monday's meeting, or at least, or come with questions for our next meeting, because it was very helpful.
Nick, we decided that we would like to see if Tim Olson could come to our next meeting and talk to us about the two projects that Joe needs to, we want to make a recommendation at our next meeting to the select board before their December 6th meeting about the GAC filtration project. And I guess he can talk to the backflow valve at the Asbury Grove too, but the GAC filtration project is the big one. That's one of the projects that Joe, I guess, wants to move forward on, and so we just want to make sure that we're,
The reason for the overage, you mean?
yeah, yep. And John McGrath wasn't here when we initially looked at it, so a little bit of background for him and for those of us who could use a refresher. And if he has any written materials that he could provide us ahead of time, we could look at those and be prepared, because then at our next meeting, we want to be able to talk to him and then go ahead and, I guess, take a vote. We'll vote on what our recommendation
Right.
will be
Yeah.
to the select board.
I assume via Zoom, excuse me, via Zoom would be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, should we have our next meeting by Zoom,
Yes.
just in general? Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
That's what we've been doing.
Yeah.
Speaking of the next meeting, Christina, did you want to
What was that second one?
discuss that
It was filtration project, what was the other one?
Yeah. thank you.
scheduling?
With filtration, the premium pay,
No, for
GAC filtration project?
and then the health,
No, for the, Tim Olson.
GAC filtration project.
The filtration project, what was the second one?
oh, the Asbury Grove, right.
Oh, that's right.
The
Yeah.
backwater valve, exactly.
The other thing is, we were talking about potentially moving our meetings from Wednesday night to Tuesday night. Nick, did you have a conflict
No,
over the summer? Was it?
I did over the
You did,
summer, but
okay. So now it would be okay with you?
Yeah.
Tuesday nights is okay? Everybody else okay?
I have somewhat of a conflict, but it's not, it's not a hard and fast one, but it may be sort of potentially a once a month kind of meeting that happens on a Tuesday. So it may not necessarily align with ours, so that alone, it may not be reason to stop us from switching.
Okay.
So, but I wanted to throw that out there, is that from time to time, it could cause conflicts for me.
Okay.
But it's not going to certainly be an every meeting kind of conflict.
Okay.
So,
Is it okay if we try it for a while?
yeah, no, exactly, because
And try it for a few months and,
yeah, because does that work much better for you?
not for me, but for
Oh, for Alex,
yeah.
of course, yeah.
Trying to be the stick in the mud.
No, especially as we get into budget season. I'm happy to give that a try.
Oh, I thought it was for you.
No.
It's for, oh, never mind.
Yeah, so let's do that for a while. So I think our next meeting will actually be, I assume it's November 30th then, not December 1st.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Did you say you have something on the Patton Homestead? Or are you gonna
Yeah, I have
something?
like a very brief presentation. I know that Joe mentioned he'll be coming to, I guess, the next,
Yep.
to give a more in-depth, but he wanted me to maybe, so we can just punt this until he's here, if that's what the board wants, or we can look into,
If you have something you can show us, I think we can,
sure.
should we look, everybody, should we look at it and then
Sure.
we can talk to Joe next time.
Okay, all right, so Patton Homestead update, oops. As we all know, the Patton Homestead is, it is the homestead where General Patton sort of hails from. It was in 2012, it was gifted to the town. For a long time, it sat unused and sort of vacant, save for sort of, there's some interior space that was finished, but it remained sort of largely as it had been for many years. The outside, it's sort of like a park in a sense up there. It's a really pretty property. It's very interesting. So there has been a push in the last few years to find a sort of a proper different usage for the property. Over the last 2 years specifically, there's been a pretty sizable infusion of capital investments into the property to bring it to its current condition. Currently, there is a licensing agreement with Incubate, which is a co-working space, I guess, for the easiest way to describe it. This has drawn capital accounts at the Patton Homestead down to quite a bit. We're going to try to put a pause on any capital work unless it is absolutely necessary up there for maintenance. I don't think it's gotten out of hand, but it's become very, this kind of work is really expensive right now. Anyone who's doing work on their home or anything knows that contractors are hard to find and very expensive right now. And so, anyhow, the current usage for the homestead is the interior has been, I don't know if converted is the right way to describe it, but it's a co-working space, and we also host or hold special events up there, sort of on a like a one-off basis. So there've been a couple of weddings up there. There's been sort of large picnics. There are 11, so Incubate, right? They've been in operation for a little over 6 months. There's 11, what they're calling, I guess, members, which is nearing sort of the projected capacity for the first year. There's still some space for more members, and Incubate is actively seeking more members up there. And it's the easiest way to describe this maybe is sort of like think of like a gym membership where you join, and then you're able to sort of use this space and different spaces within the homestead, within the sort of main residence in the homestead for sort of professional work. There's a revenue sharing agreement with Incubate as part of the licensing agreement that we have with them. Currently, the monthly income is $5,200 a month, and that's a little lower than it was projected to be, but I think some of that comes from the capital work that we had to get completed in order to sort of open up different spaces for use. Recurring monthly costs for Incubate are $1,410 on average over the last, I think, 6 months. And so all revenues shared 50/50 from Incubate with the town after their specific expenses are taken into account. So that leaves roughly $1,900 a month coming into the town in additional memberships. Should there be any, would increase that number. So the FY22, the sort of projected budgeted revenue estimate of $45,830 is too high, and will need to likely come down because assuming we took in $1,900 a month, it would lead to a little under $23,000 in revenue. So other revenues that come in, the Wenham Museum, they rent a space at the Homestead, and to the tune of $500 a month, so that's $6,000 a year. And then there are special events, which I mentioned earlier, which includes weddings, picnics, parties, etc. We don't really have to provide much staffing, but sometimes we do need to provide a staff member or do some preparation for the event. We did just, I think this week actually, hire, or a new Patton Homestead director started, a woman named Holly Erickson. And she's working 20 hours a week right now, and she's been sort of charged with developing the special event sort of portfolio. She's experienced in event management, and as well as sort of being a day-to-day presence up there for the town. So the special event revenue in '21 returned about $3,500 in total revenue. That's projected by the manager's office to go up to about $10,000 in this current fiscal year. So that was all that I had prepared for tonight, just to give you an idea of what the operations are looking like. And then Joe will be coming to give them maybe a more detailed operational presentation.
Alex?
Yes.
If I may, the new director, she is a town employee,
Correct.
so that she receives, based upon her schedule, fringe benefits as well as compensation.
Correct. I do not know offhand if she's elected to take benefits, but she would be eligible for them, yes.
So can you give us an estimate of the month-to-month operating costs?
For the town, for the town, yeah. So it's tough. If you, including capital or excluding capital is the real question. If you're excluding capital, they're relatively fixed. We have staff costs, a couple $1,000s a month for the director's salary, and then utilities at their peak were around $500 a month for oil. Oil deliveries come every 2 weeks, and they were roughly $250 each in the dead of winter. So we're coming into winter right now, oil and gas getting more expensive. I would expect that to go up to, just offhand, maybe $300 or $325 per delivery. So expenses are going to go up, marginally. But so those are the real only expenses that we have up
So
there.
based upon current occupancy,
Mm-hmm.
it's a deficit.
We're like really close to being kind of like dead even with what income. We're a little probably in the red in terms of our being able to float the operation. There was money that was appropriated, budgeted and appropriated for this sort of thing. So
What's left of that fund?
in the operating, I think it's like $23,000 that it's in the operating side.
Wasn't there a large sum put aside to draw from for expenses associated with Patton?
It was for capital, yeah.
Most of it was capital.
It was, I think, 70,000.
And what's left of that?
There's, I think, 21 and change left in the capital side right now.
So the whole issue, as I recall, I think this is fair to say, we were concerned that Patton not be a continuing draw upon tax funds.
Right.
We wanted to see if it had the potential to be self-sustaining, quote unquote. and we were willing to give it some time to seek to achieve that. And Christina, you were kind enough to send that contract over again, and I promptly lost it to the ether world somewhere.
I'll pull it up, David.
But we haven't reached the first payment point yet?
We actually, we just did. On Wednesday of last week, I was handed a check for, I think it was $4,400. And we actually have not deposited that yet because we are using it as a way to train Holly on how to turn revenue over and how to, some introduction to Munis. And so so that will go into the operating expenses and, so that'll help buoy those sort of costs.
I had another probing question, which is,
Actually, if you give me, one question I have is, and we can certainly save this for our next meeting if this is more in Joe's realm, but you mentioned that so Holly's working primarily on special events, but she's also a presence up there.
Yep.
So is she actually facilitating the operation with the Incubate members?
No, they have sort of their own director or manager, a man named Michael Lacerdo, who is sort of the proprietor of Incubate. And
Right.
I don't know if he works.
Is he actually there on site?
He is sometimes. They have 3 locations.
Okay.
3 sort of shared co-working spaces. I don't know how often he's working out of there. Every time I've gone to Patton Homestead, maybe 7 or 8 times, he's been there probably 6 of them. So
Right.
he's there a lot.
He's scheduled to be there, and he has someone, when he's not there, someone else who is sort of,
Okay, so yeah, so I guess maybe
Elected
I should probably even ask
to-
you as a member.
I'm a member
I'll
there. so I-
take
I'm supposed
your
to-
chair hat off for a second, but, so it's not like, and I know Holly just started, that if you're there, you're gonna go to her with questions in terms of like, manager type questions for anything.
I
in
wouldn't
the
think so. I
building.
wouldn't think so.
Maybe
So
like
what-
facility-related questions, if there are any,
Okay.
would be more appropriate.
And I guess where I'm going with this, if there's a portion of her time that I feel like is facilitating the operation of Incubate as a tenant, that should come off the top of the Incubate expenses. And it's not going to cover her whole salary by any stretch, but it's something to be mindful of and to delve into further. And it's maybe even too early to tell, but I wouldn't want her providing hours. They're really operating expenses that we're essentially paying for 100%.
Mhm.
and Alex, are we accounting for time spent by town employees, DPW people to maintain property? Are they engaged at all?
They are engaged and they're up there routinely for maintenance of the property, especially, landscape and the grounds, that sort of thing.
Are those costs allocated?
They're not part of this agreement. They are,
They're not part of the agreement with Incubate,
correct,
but they are part of the budget for Patton.
Right.
correct.
So that's where those expenses should be identified and included in the budget.
Yeah, so our public works employees, I do not believe we're charging time to Patton for them.
But we're paying them for their time there.
Yes.
So what else is Joe going to bring in that,
But before we go, I'm sorry, John, but shouldn't that be an accounting cost analysis consideration?
Yeah, it should be. It's worth exploring. I'm not sure exactly to what end, though.
Well, it goes, the end is to know whether we have a profitable or an unprofitable operation. Is this something that we're going to be sinking money into over a long period of time? I put down, by the way, just for the rest of you, that with Tim Olson coming, that Patton Homestead, both capital repair and maintenance should be part of the discussion as well as the other 2 items. So we can talk to him next time he comes in.
Correct.
But as far as the Patton Homestead as it stands right now, you're telling us it's not making money.
Yeah.
It's costing us.
And if one were to add to the calculation, the subject we were just discussing, the delta would be greater.
Yes.
And it's important for you and Joe to understand our primary concern.
Oh, I'm very aware of it. Yeah.
Thank you. I interrupted you, Joe.
Well, no, I was going to say, I'm ready to vote. So, move on. Just doing the math in my head. My question was going to be, what else can Joe bring in?
Yeah.
Because I'd be looking for, okay, give me the 5-year run on what we've been doing since 2012. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
Really been about,
part of the problem is COVID.
Oh,
There were big-
absolutely.
There were big plans. and
Absolutely.
it's kind of all.
But I'd still like to know, what's the 5-year run?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that, let's not blame it all on COVID. The place has had it did not materialize in any revenue for 4 of those years,
Yeah, that's my point, yeah.
and 4 or 5 of those years, and so it's just getting some revenue right now.
Yeah.
And so it's really not a positive future, a positive outlook as to what's happened, and I'm not sure where it's going.
Well, right, and I
Well, we know where it's going, is the property, recommendation that the property be sold, right?
And the agreement takes that potential into account.
Yeah.
but even, I even look at sort of a middle ground, which is effectively, we own the property and it could take, it could take a while to sell that. And it's, especially when you talk about the town actually selling it. But in my mind, sort of in the meantime, it's anything you do to that, you outsource that, hopefully with a positive ROI. So the incubate part potentially
Yeah.
can get there, but then if we've got a town employee that's working on special events, that has to generate special events revenue that is in excess
Yeah.
of, because otherwise it just, in my mind, it just doesn't make sense for the town to be in that business, so to speak, with a town employee. Like, is there another way that we could basically outsource it to somebody to run events there, and there's a profit sharing kind of thing, so that we're not out of pocket if events aren't generated. That's why, I was open to, giving Incubate a try, and it's actually, maybe below projections, but at least it's something. And those kinds of things, as long as it doesn't forestall our ability to sell the property or do something else with the property. Because it could be, the best result is some sort of, middle ground, as opposed to an outright sale with sort of no restrictions on it. But it comes back to the key thing in my mind is that it can't be a future drain on the town that is, effectively contingent upon, the town actually being able to generate business. I think that's
That makes sense.
tough.
In the interim, at least, we're committed to this incubate undertaking for a defined period of time. What are you contemplating budgeting for the next year for the patent?
it's going to take a conversation with the town manager, and we haven't had that yet. But I would want to get a more accurate picture on revenue projections, and then we'd have to look at expenses based on that. It's been, it's kind of tough because it's been sort of like a startup in a sense up there, where knowing that costs were going to be greater for a while, and we're sort of reaching that equilibrium right now, and so it's hard to project if revenues are going to grow. It's possible that, especially special event, I mean, if we have a couple of weddings up there, for example, we could outpace that $10,000 in a hurry.
So the estimate, the manager's estimate is a sizable increase in special event income.
Yeah.
What is that based on? And I don't mean to put you in a spot.
Yeah, I think that maybe it's better to have the
Yes,
conversation
okay.
when Joe's here.
But I mean,
I do have a question about going afield from that, is that you talked about work being done up there, and one of the things that we had focused on was getting the Essex County carpenters and electricians to do some work into Essex County Tech.
Yep.
Carpenters and technicians to do work in the barn, which would enhance or make it more favorable for people to do events there,
Sure, yep.
whether they're small meetings or larger events. Has that fallen by the wayside, or is that?
No, the partnership sort of remains fruitful right now with Essex Technical, and they've been into the stables doing work. I think the last project they had up there was electrical. There's also talk about sort of like a pathway outside leading from, there's like a lower parking lot, having them building a pathway that goes up to the sort of the residence building. And so the conversations are ongoing with Joe, and I'm not sure who his contact there is, but they are working together in partnership on some projects. And they have over the I think it was in the, I think it was late summer when they were up there last.
Does that make the barn operational now?
I don't know if it's up to code to host the events yet. I'm not sure.
Shaking your head.
I wouldn't think so.
Wouldn't think so.
I've been in there. I wouldn't think so. It's a barn. It's
So-
an old barn.
So did we put it like a time box around this?
Well, we have
Yeah.
this agreement with Incubate, which has a duration of,
Well, but I mean, wasn't there discussion initially of like a 3-year kind of
Yeah, that's what I'm after. yeah.
Right.
experiment, and we're about a year and a half or 2 years into
Yeah,
it?
no, I will say that Incubate is COVID-related, because that did come in, that occurred
Right.
right at the time COVID started.
Yeah.
And so that's going to, I'm sure that's a hiccup.
but you would think, Nick, that might enhance this kind of,
Say that again, please?
the impact of the virus theoretically should enhance people looking for alternative work sites. That is,
I don't think so. I think a lot of people are trying to work from home. But I'm not going to argue, I don't think we need to argue that issue. I just think that
You don't
that could be a
I
hiccup.
don't want to argue.
Not
Not
today.
tonight.
Not tonight.
Let's go to the Black Cow. We can.
Okay.
There you go. I would think you'd want to put a sort of a time box on the thing and say, okay, hey, at the end of fiscal '23, we're going to decide to go forward or to end it or something. I don't know. I just feel as though there needs to be some kind of, something definitive, that's all.
And we all did. And I think it was 3 years when we discussed it. Then came the Incubate agreement. And I don't remember what the time frame is, but I do recall that our ability to get out of that agreement was a topic for our debate and discussion. And it ended, I thought, in a disparate way. That is, Incubate had greater latitude to cancel than we did.
That's right.
So, given that fact, what's the termination date of the Incubate?
Yeah, I mean, if I remember, it was sort of 2 years, and that was probably starting maybe a year ago, but maybe not even a year ago. I'd have to go back and look. But remember, there was a key provision, which was really what made me comfortable, is the fact that, we can sell it in any event. And, because ultimately, it's, if we decided as a town, we want to sell it, I wouldn't necessarily do, I wouldn't want to terminate the Incubate agreement, because it would still be generating revenue in the short term.
Yeah.
And I don't think a sale is like, it's not like we're going to sell this to somebody and they're going to go move in there and live in the homestead. Like, it's probably going to be potentially, I'm guessing, a complicated sale, because we want certain restrictions on it, et cetera, given that it's such a historic piece of property. And ideally, you could find a home with someone that maybe would, run an events type business out of it, or, continue with Incubate as a tenant, or similar, I don't know. But it's more, I think, a question of, in my mind, not making this a drain on town resources,
Right.
and not having the town be essentially with a side business.
Yeah.
those are the sort of, things I would want to resolve, but you can't necessarily unwind this in a short period of time. But I think we need to start going down and talking about alternatives and talking about planning, which may not, affect anything that goes on there right now in the short term. But,
Yeah, I wouldn't think it's worth the time of the selectmen, Joe, Alex, the DPW head, all these people spending time on it based on what it's generating, or even potentially could generate. To me, without even knowing much about it, doesn't sound like best case, it's a winner for the town. That's, and I'm completely uninformed on the whole thing.
Much of the motivation surrounds the heritage and the history.
I completely get it.
Which prompted perhaps a looser approach
Yeah,
than might have been fiscally prudent.
yeah, I completely get it.
Was the prior director, Kaylee, was she paid as a town employee? Was she paid the same?
She's a town employee.
Was the same?
Yep.
And the operating account, the patent operating account, where did that money come from initially? Was that just a appropriation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we paying her unemployment?
I don't think so. I'll look into it.
I
No,
thought
we're
she
not.
did-
She left on her own.
decided to leave, yeah.
We're not paying her
But
unemployment.
she has another job,
She
went to do
found
something.
something else, yeah.
Which is another job.
yes, something like that.
Okay, so more discussion to come. It might be good at some point for us to go out there and get a tour with them.
Say that again, please?
It might be good for us to go out there and get a tour sometime with Michael Lucerto. He certainly has a lot of ideas, and it really is a beautiful piece of land. But yeah, I think there's still big questions about whether it's really appropriate for the town to be involved in.
Is
Trying
he
to keep
interested
it.
in purchasing?
Is he interested in purchasing? I don't know.
On our agenda, I was a little bit confused because we had said that the patent homestead was going to be a major topic this particular meeting. And not next meeting, because next meeting we have, we wanted to do Gordon Conwell, have Mr. Smith in, and HDC coming in. So do we have bandwidth for that as well?
Joe's coming in purposely next meeting on patent?
Yeah, he
Well,
told me
ARPA as well,
yesterday
yeah.
that they just hired the new executive director, and that they would come to our next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that,
Slight change of
We're gonna-
plans.
do we want to put that off, or do we want to try to get it all in?
That's a lot to get in. Perhaps since we've begun the discussion this evening, we might want to continue it at the next meeting and push off one or two of the other items. I think the other two items might be in a tandem to some extent, since the HTC might eventually get involved in the seminary land issue development.
So I'm sorry, Dave, are you saying we should have the seminary HTC at next meeting? Or
I'm saying that we push it off to the following meeting.
Do you think you should do, are you thinking we should do them at the same time? Or could we do
I think we should do.
Smith one and then HDC later?
No, I think we should do both at the same time. 'Cause I think there's some interrelationship.
There is, yes. But I didn't know if they wanted to get a background first and then have HDC come in. But okay, I just wanted to understand what you were saying.
Let me just check something, because
Do you have anything else on the agenda that we need to? I think the patent homestead is a little insipid. when you, but by itself, but I think in conjunction with the other two, it's almost too much, but I don't know which is the, I don't know how we want to deal with that, unless there's some other topic that we want to talk about at next meeting.
Well, I mean, one, we do it by Zoom, because one thing is for the discussion on Gordon and HTC, would we want Joe to be at that meeting?
Yes.
I don't know, maybe we try to do it all then, because then all the next meeting, just because it's almost like the budget stuff hasn't completely started cranking up, which is then really going to occupy our time.
It's supposed to, though, the week after Thanksgiving, right?
Yep, that's when we're.
That's when we're starting to have the meetings.
Bill, yeah. My 2 cents is that we could probably, I mean, we won't have a ton to talk about budget-wise in the FinCom meeting.
Correct.
But
We'll be doing the smaller meetings
Yeah.
Right.
during that week.
Exactly.
I think we should squeeze them all in to
That's-
next meeting.
That's, yeah, just sort of focus on almost, in a sense.
Also going to have an issue with the meeting after that. I just realized, so the timing of the
Which would
meeting.
be
I'm traveling to Germany again.
14th or something? or
Yeah, on the
15th?
14th, yeah.
Oh. Do we, are you actually traveling that day?
That, yes.
Oh, okay, I was gonna say, because that actually may be one of the Tuesdays I got a conflict.
Really?
So, but if we did it in the morning, like we've done when you were in Germany in the past.
Wait, is that
Oh.
Tuesday or Wednesday? We're talking about Tuesday?
We're talking about Tuesday now, yeah.
Everything okay?
Yeah,
German?
just a regular check-in.
yeah, do we want to do a Wednesday morning meeting that day?
Could we do, yeah, can we do Wednesday, December 15th, actually?
I think that works, yeah.
You mean our normal day?
Back to the normal day, but in the morning.
Okay.
It's a compromise.
I remember.
Here we go.
And then 2 weeks after that is December 28th, 29th. I guess that'll be fine, but we'll see what we do about that.
You know, just for clarification, the next meeting will be on a Tuesday, which is actually the 30th of November, is that correct?
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
Yes,
6:30. Zoom.
By Zoom.
all right.
Early.
Tuesday, November 30th. We'll try to squeeze all that in.
Okay, so in connection with that.
Congratulations.
In connection with that
Maybe I should have
meeting,
muted my mic when I said that.
we want to invite Dave Smith from the
Yes.
Seminary Committee, Rick Mitchell from HDC. Anyone else?
Rick Mitchell.
Is it just Dave Smith and Joe that are on that committee?
No, it's a larger group.
But that's a good sampling, I guess.
Rick is also on the committee, on the
There
seminary.
you go. That's a good sampling.
Okay. I can easily invite Dave Smith. Can yell out my window at him.
Do you want me to invite Rick, or?
Please, yeah, if you can.
Okay. I'll enter it in my computer.
11, November 30th by Zoom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are we good to move on? Do we have something, anything specific, anything else specific to talk about? We have town budget on, but I think we're good with that for now, right?
I think so, yeah.
I got an email today from Dana Alara with a link to tomorrow's school committee meeting. And I was going to forward you this, but I can't, I'm not on the internet.
Time for the meeting on Wednesday, the 15th?
If we do the Wednesday morning one, what time?
Did we want to do 8 a.m.?
Whatever, that's fine with me, yeah.
Yes, that's right.
8 a.m.?
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
And that'll be
And that'll
via
be-
Zoom.
By Zoom again.
That'll be in person.
You take us with you?
Right.
And that will be on Wednesday, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Nick, I'll set those Zoom links up and keep you in the loop on that.
Okay.
So the school budget, the finance and operations section of the agenda will have information on apportionment calculation, as well as the superintendent's initial recommended FY23 budget presentation. So I'm going to forward you that with the link.
Okay, Alex had already forwarded the
The
apportionment.
Did you
apportionment,
see the
yeah.
apportionment information?
Yeah, no, I was sort of surprised by it, actually.
Fortunate.
Yeah.
Our share has gone up.
Yeah.
Do you understand that formula sufficiently to check the accuracy?
Yeah, yep. I'll double check it. I briefly did this afternoon, but
Thank you.
I'll verify.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm just going to forward this email to you all right now. So if anyone has the time or inclination to watch that school committee meeting tomorrow night, I unfortunately won't be able to watch it.
Yeah, I will.
Can you copy me on that?
Thank
link?
you.
I expect I will.
Thank you.
And they will be on, it should be on YouTube, I'd imagine, after that,
Yep.
or HWCam.
Well, they broadcast it live, right?
Yeah, they'll do it live as well as then I think you can go watch the recording at any point in time on.
Yep.
That allows you to skip through.
If you're watching the recorded one?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
But you never do, right?
No, it allows you to skip through.
I watch so many things on fast forward. It's great. You can get like 1 1/4 or 1 1/2
Yeah, I was
times.
going to say 1.5 would be great.
Yeah.
So that was like an auction.
Why do the school committees talk so quickly?
Okay.
So are we at a point where Alex can escape?
Yes.
But before you do,
No.
I'm the Zoom master, so I think I'm.
Actually, he's stuck
You're
with us.
locked in.
I just
Yeah,
have-
you're stuck with me.
oh, okay. Two questions. Do we have potential of hiring an assessor?
No. Flatly, we don't right now. We are working towards a shared solution with Wenham, and we will not be able to reach it until '23. So for the time being, we are going it with a sort of a combination of Jane, who's currently an administrative assistant, but we're looking at finding a way to elevate her, and a contract with Patriot, who has been very responsive and very helpful in getting us to meet some deadlines that
Yep.
we had to do.
Thank you. The other question I have in terms of what's the status of the COA? I know we have
Yeah,
a temporary who's there 1 day a week
yeah.
only. What are the plans?
I have been looped out of this issue. My understanding is that they have been holding interviews and have either made an offer or close to making an offer to someone to become sort of the permanent solution there. I don't know the exact timeline of where things stand now, but my understanding is that they're very close to hiring someone.
Good.
I can dig into that a little more and just shoot you an email if you'd like.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I talked to Joe yesterday, we talked about the assessor's office, and he said he was making Jane a temporary assistant assessor, and I think hoping to make her a permanent assistant assessor. And is in discussions with Wenham about sharing a director of assessing. He's just received a memo from Wenham with a proposal, and if that was going forward, that would be part of the budget process and would go into effect on July 1st. And he said because just getting the new rate certified now, that once that's done, he felt like we could manage the rest of the year without an assessor. And that way, if we join up with Wenham, our combined efforts, we should be able to get a higher sort of quality of candidate. He's been having a difficulty, or it's been impossible to get any qualified candidates to apply, even given what the town is offering. And the other benefit then is that we can each town will have their own assistant, but then those assistants will be able to work with each other and cover each other's vacations or things like that and cooperate in that way, I guess. So he had just received the memo from Wenham, so he's going to review that and then see if that's something that they can move forward with and come to us. And I can try to remember to ask about the Council on Aging too. Since I'm talking about the meeting that I had with it, was there any other questions that you had for
No, thank you.
Alex? Because there was something else that Joe had mentioned to me yesterday, and this is having to do with a potential request to the Massachusetts Office of Disability for a grant to help with this building, the town hall building. In order to do that, we need to have what's called a transition plan. And in order to have that, we need to have an assessment of our facility. So there's there's some place called the McCormick School that can do this, and they have what he called a templated program where they come into a town, they do a self-assessment of all the facilities, so go through all the facilities and kind of check to see their status, what would need to be done to
Talking about ADA?
yes, to bring where we stand against the ADA standards. And then a plan can be made as to how to get there. And then once we have that, we can use that it's something that needs to be checked off before we can go to the Mass Office of Disability for this grant. So he will be coming to us with a request for a reserve fund transfer of $20,000, I think, or approximately $20,000 to do this transition plan, do this survey and transition plan. So that is coming, but he wanted to sort of raise that.
Christina, once we set that in motion, and it is determined that we are not ADA compliant, which we are not, does that back us into a corner in terms of a requirement which we have been unable to fund?
Yeah, so I remember going through this with, specifically with the town, and I sort of asked him that. I said, we come up with these list of things, deficiencies, he said that we can prioritize things, so we can prioritize the town hall building project as the first thing that we're going to work on and apply for that grant. Specifically with the town hall, there was a meeting that I participated in with the architects and with an official. And it said this building is, it doesn't conform with the current building standards, but we're not in non-compliance because we're still grandfathered in. So nothing is triggered. We're not required at this point to bring it into compliance. There's no state law or regulation that requires us to bring this building into compliance right now.
if we're seeking a grant, failure of the grant, we still would not be required.
Right.
But if the grant were granted, of what size would it be?
I think it would, he said it would only be, I think the figure was a few $100,000, only a few $100,000, but to a specific, I believe it would be targeted to a specific project. So for example, we want to do, the ramp, and the ramp's going to be this much money, and we want to do the bathrooms, and the bathrooms are going to be a certain amount of money. So whatever money we get, those projects, would then have to go forward, but I think they would have to be, and then there were questions, I don't know the answers to all these, but I think they would have to be discrete projects that could be done with the money that we received.
Given what I recall of the money that we were talking about for the town hall project, that $200,000 or $300,000 figure,
I don't think it would, I think that the trigger is 30% of the total value of the property was what triggers you to bring something into full compliance with the ADA, if my memory serves me, and I don't think this grant would reach that point.
Yeah, I mean, so it's 30% of the current assessed value of the building, which is pretty low, yeah. But I think the question is, okay, so we get this grant for $100,000 to do a ramp and bathroom. We're not going to do those if we're not going to do the whole rest of the project, right? Like, we're only going to do those if we do the whole project, yeah.
which would mean investing in coming back to the start, appropriating some money to undertake something that has significant pitfalls or a reduced potential.
Yeah.
And even if successful, what are we going to do with that money?
But I guess what you're saying, Christina, that effectively this is more of a financing type of thing for a small portion of the town hall project. Is that the way it's being viewed?
I think so. I think, yeah.
We'd only be doing it if we were actually going ahead with the whole thing, but it would actually save us whatever the grant would be.
Right, like it would be done in conjunction with the whole project. If
Right.
we're not going to do the whole project, it wouldn't be done. But I see what David is saying. So we would invest the $20,000 or whatever it is to undertake this review of all the facilities in the hope of getting a $100,000 or $200,000 grant.
That would be wasted if, right.
If we can't get the whole rest of the building funded,
Right.
then this money
The
is
study is,
wasted, yeah.
exactly, right.
But it's worth discussing.
Sure.
I don't mean to say forget it. Seems it has some issues.
But Joe's going to come to us with a more specific question.
Are we on liaison updates?
Yes.
So may I, in terms of the master plan steering committee, we had our first public session last Saturday morning, and I note the stark absence of any FinCom members.
Yeah, I wasn't there.
About 40 people came. I don't know how to assess that. It was a nice meeting. People who came engaged in terms of kind of questions, what they like about Hamilton, what they don't like, what they want to see changed, et cetera. And people interrelated very nicely. And we are now, I am on a subcommittee that is working on survey questions, which will eventually be electronically or by U.S. mail distributed. And we have expressed through Patrick and I think Joe, to some extent, our dissatisfaction thus far with the consultant in terms of draft chapters of an ultimate report, which a high school person could have done by looking at relevant source material. There was no expertise involved in it. We've made that clear to the consultant, and we'll see how that develops. So that's my report. It would be helpful if there were more, and there will be more public events, that if FinCom could have a greater participatory role, that would be helpful, I think.
Do you have any idea when those are going to occur?
I don't know.
I unfortunately had a conflict last Saturday.
Yeah.
But
I'll certainly let you know.
Any good value out of the session? Any nuggets?
No, you know, what stymies me is people want things. All right, how do you pay for the things? So on the wish list, I put down at the end of the session, win the lottery, because otherwise it's tax-based.
Yeah.
So in the questionnaire, we're going to try to formulate it so as to get people to focus on how much they wish to invest in various objectives.
And in what form did the meeting last Saturday, in terms of what was, how was the public?
Attendees were broken into subgroups, and the steering committee was, a member was at each table, and a representative from the consultant was, and people were asked first what they like about Hamilton, and then the presenter from the table would summarize it, and then what would they like to see changed, and the same process. So it was a nice citizen-based, although meager, attended event, and I don't know how to assess it in terms of the potential.
How many did you expect to have, or did they expect to have?
I don't know the answer to that, Nick.
Because 40 sounds like a pretty good number for that
Right.
kind of an event.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not what we'd like to see. You know, you'd like to see a couple of hundred, but
Yeah. There were very few younger people. Most of it were more senior people, but not COA people, if I'm making that distinction. They're older, active.
Kind of like the special town meeting attendees.
Yes, that's right. So that is my update.
I knew I'd get some feedback for not showing up.
I'll penalize you one scotch.
Okay.
Should come up with a reward system instead. We'll all show up.
Lemonade.
the lottery.
The lottery.
Yeah.
Okay, any other liaison updates?
Yeah, the only one I'll give is more sort of on the projection, sort of combine those two. But so I got from Alex, thank you for the debt info. Really, the only other thing, unless I somehow missed it in all the detail, which was fantastic, was it had the school components of the debt exclusions, but I didn't have a sort of schedule for them. Do you know if you've got that? I could just go directly to
You can go to
Vinny.
Vinny and ask.
Yeah.
I have, I've tried to grab this a couple times. He's directed me to their website, and I couldn't find exactly what I needed.
Okay, and I can check on the website, and if I can't find it, I'll just ask him directly. But I wanted just to ask you, just in case it was something easily
Try, see what you can get,
obtainable.
and if you can get it out of him, please forward it to me.
Okay. And then, yeah, so then that's the sort of final piece of the puzzle, a little bit to incorporate that stuff. But I think, I don't know if you saw my response, Christina, about for the, whenever the umbrella meeting is determined, as long as it's not on the 7th, I should be good to go for that one.
Great, yeah.
And then also to,
Patrick,
exactly for the consultant.
thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, so Joe sent out that email trying to schedule that umbrella committee meeting in response to my asking him about it yesterday. So that is in the works. There are a lot of people who couldn't make various days, so I don't know yet.
Oh,
what
it's
day.
it's going to be like, it's probably not going to be any of those dates,
Yeah.
because it's
but-
like herding cats.
But yeah, so we're trying to set it up in the next few weeks, which will be exciting.
But yeah, no, so the timing's great, because it's, so whenever that happens, like I said, other than the 7th, it'll be good. One question on the umbrella, I can't remember what we had decided, since, I don't know if the 3 of us can attend, or am I more of just a,
Presenter?
well, I don't know, because it's not a formal, like, committee, so I'm not sure what the, well, anyway, we should just figure out whatever the rules have to be.
It's not a public meeting. Well, but if the 3 of us are
But if the
there.
3 of us are
But
there,
we're not talking about FinCom matters? I don't know.
Well, I wish to point out
it's,
that I was not included in the invitee list.
Oh,
And I also wish to point out that I have made that omission known to Joe in my own inimitable way.
Yeah, but I think what we're
Okay.
saying is that if we have 3 people there,
It's a
I
quorum.
understand.
David's just saying that he was initially
Not
an
invited.
always invite.
Yeah.
And that was the idea, it was the chair and David that would always be invited to these umbrella group. David is the sort of founder, and Christina is chair. So, anyway, it's just, I just raise it in terms of whatever we have to do for
meeting.
open meeting law.
yeah.
I mean, you could post it.
Well, I don't think we have,
but it's not public.
But then, right, because it's not public. And so I don't know, it's one of those sort of somewhat gray areas.
no
Yeah.
votes are taken, I don't think. And it's not FinCom
No.
specific.
Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to stay home if it's, if one of us
No, we
needs
need-
to,
You should
but-
be there.
but John, yeah. But
Yeah, it's just
John
more-
needs to be there because
Right, I'll,
understands that.
right.
It's not an open meeting, in other words, it is not on camera here.
No,
Right,
It's not a
no.
public meeting.
Because if.
Because it's only one member of each committee normally.
Right, but when you get 3 of us together, it's a meeting. and
Right,
it's-
exactly,
That's open law.
yeah.
Well, if you get 3 of us together and we're talking about FinCom business, I mean, 3 of us can get together in your backyard and have a,
Yes,
Big-
by the
big
way,
pumpkins.
But you have a
not
meeting.
invited us to.
you're going to a meeting.
Right, because
Town
it
meeting.
is an actual, like, yeah, that's why I would just, we should be very cognizant of that.
yeah.
And,
All right, well, let's see if we can settle on a date.
right, yeah, let's start with the date, because
Come on,
that's going to be the harder thing, and then we can pick
Because
2 out of the 3 of us.
I may
if-
not,
if need be.
may not be there anyway.
Right.
Do we want to still try to do some minutes?
Yeah, we have 2.
I looked at the,
By the way, one of them has to do, had to do with the Board of Selectmen.
Yep.
And the Board of Selectmen approved those minutes. I just got a memo on that. So they're completely approved with no changes. So if we could take a look and see if there's any changes in those minutes first.
I had looked at that one. There was only one thing, one kind of minor thing. It says the full board was participating remotely, but some of us were here.
Maybe that references the substance of the participation.
Wait, which one are you?
I was quite present that day.
I do that.
On the first page at the bottom, the second to the last line on the first page, it was just when I called the meeting to order.
Oh, gotcha, okay, yeah, yes. Although you also,
That's 10-4? is
You've
that
got to
what you-
change it on top too. Because it shows you as being on, so it's basically changing it in two places.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was here in person, and who else was here in person?
I was not,
Yeah.
Were you here, Nick?
I thought I was, but I,
Yeah, I think we probably didn't say it, and so she didn't know that we were here in person. I don't know, so I think it said, where it says, at the top where it says who was present, FinCom members who were present in person are me, Christina Schenk-Hargrove, and Nick Tenson. And then online were John Prulidge, David Wanger, and John McGrath. You were all participating online, right?
Yep.
Remotely.
Yep.
And then,
And if there's any doubt, she can pull up the video.
yeah, and then the next to last line also. Nick and I were here in person, and the others were here remotely. Other than that, it looked okay to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
is that significant?
I don't,
Hmm?
what, is it significant whether we were here in person or remote? I don't know, I just noticed it. I remember being here.
Well, they've identified those who are here and those who are online, right?
Is a motion in order?
I think so. Everybody okay
Yeah.
to, if we have a
I
motion?
move to adopt the minutes from,
October 4th.
thank you.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No abstentions? All right, unanimously approved. And we have one other one. Are you guys ready to do the other one as well? Or should we wait?
I'd like to wait, if you would mind.
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to look at the other one, so if we can,
That was the one from the 3rd, November 3rd.
We got it out quickly.
Oh, no, I mean, it's,
You're doing a great
Marcy's,
job.
Marcy machine. It's great.
all right, so since we have like 2 minutes before 9.
Before we, if I may, have you any observations or any
That's what I
questions
was
you'd
just
like to
gonna-
ask?
Turn attention.
I don't think any questions. I think that fascinating to listen to the conversation and just get to learn more about the town. So excited to continue to learn.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we've never, or it's been a while since we had an associate member, so the board has 5 members. But it's always kind of a scramble when someone needs to leave, and then we're kind of desperately looking for someone, so it was really important to us to try to bring someone else on, get someone else kind of looped in a little bit before there's really a need. And then if somebody is absent, right, we do have, I mean, it's a non-voting position, but
Right.
at least we have another person here. And I think,
The normal turnover time will be July 1, so that's, that would be a normal transition time. And it's really nice, as Christine says, if we have someone in our back pocket, that makes it a whole lot easier. If not, then there's angst.
Yeah, no, exactly. We've been trying to build up a sort of a associate member bench for several years. So.
So if you know anybody else?
Right, exactly.
New to town, so don't know.
Right.
and we normally meet every other week. And like we said, we've been doing it on Wednesdays for a while now. We're going to try to do it on Tuesdays, always at 6:30 or in the evening, and it usually goes a couple hours like this. Sometimes, rarely, past 9. Yeah, I think the latest we've gone is 10.
Yeah, that was right
The
before it,
overtime,
but
yeah.
yeah.
There can be additional meetings for, like we've met with the Board of Selectmen, it may be a short part of the meeting, or maybe for the whole meeting. But that happens a handful of times a year. And then the budget time, there's other responsibilities, and so we have, sometimes we meet more often during that little squeeze towards the town hall, the meeting we have, the annual meeting.
Yeah.
We have. So that's what the commitment would be.
And we have then, we each are liaisons to various other departments or whatever, and that takes various amount of time or effort. Some of them don't really take any time. Some of them, I think Nick meets pretty regularly with
Right.
the DPW and public safety departments, but, and the school liaison sometimes can take some time, or, sitting in on those meetings also. But actually with, one good thing about COVID and these Zoom meetings is that has actually gotten a lot easier to sit down and turn on your computer when the meeting starts, rather than have to bundle up and go out there
Exactly.
on a Thursday night or whatever. And I don't know if you want to, we should probably get together at some point outside a meeting.
Perfect.
I have your email. But maybe, it might be December before we do that.
Totally understood.
And remind me what your sort of background is, or your,
Yeah, sort of grew up in Marblehead, Manchester, lived then in Boston, worked for Amazon, or currently work for Amazon, moved down to Seattle for 3 years, just moved back a year ago to Hamilton, just down the street, and sort of excited to learn more about the town and get back to the town.
awesome.
Great.
So
We're in Seattle.
Where did I live in Seattle?
Where did you live in Seattle?
We lived in Madrona and then Madison Park.
I was out there before I came here, too.
We loved it, but I have a 1-year-old, so it was nice to come back and be close to family.
Yeah.
So, as was evident, I think, from our discussion of the development, we have an interest that goes beyond financial matters. And by statute, we are charged with responsibility of making recommendations to town meeting, perhaps to the Board of Selectmen and other groups, on any or all municipal questions, any or all. So it gives us a fairly broad basis to work from.
And I know what I was going to say. We've been alternating meeting in person and meeting by Zoom, kind of back and forth. Or if it seems like something would be better done by Zoom, where you can screen share,
Right.
better done in person. And normally when we meet in person, we meet at the Council on Aging, and sit more like around a table, less of the sort of official sitting at the microphone. Although I do have a gavel
You got
here.
your gavel, nice.
Ready to use it today.
But thank you for attending.
Yeah, no, really
Really
appreciate
nice
it.
to meet you.
Thank
Yeah.
you all for your service to the town.
Cool thank you for coming. And, we welcome you to come to all the meetings, and we'll try to remember to keep you on the email loop. And if you ever can't come, that's fine, just, or if you need to duck out early or whatever. But, all right. Given all that, there might be one more motion. Can you make a motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I move to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, good night, everybody.
Good night, thank you all.
Good night,
Good
thank you,
night, Val.
everybody.
Good night, Marcy.
Good night, Marcy.
Marcy. Marcy is the person who
Yeah, she takes the minutes.
translates everything.